The stagecoach lay on its side like a dying beast, one wheel still spinning lazily in the hot Arizona wind, and amid the scattered luggage and broken wood stood a woman in a torn dress, her face streaked with dust and tears, staring at the horizon as if willing another soul to appear. Lucas Foster had been riding fence line on the northern edge of his property when he heard the distant crack of splintering wood echoing across the valley. He urged his horse forward, instinct telling him something was wrong even before he crested the ridge and saw the wreckage below. The coach had taken the curve too fast, that much was clear. The driver lay motionless 20 feet from the overturned vehicle, his neck bent at an angle that told Lucas everything he needed to know. But the woman, she was alive, standing there like a statue carved from desperation itself. As he rode closer, she turned toward him, and Lucas saw her eyes, green as spring grass, wide with shock but not quite broken. "Madam," he called out, dismounting before his horse had fully stopped. "Are you hurt?" She opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first. Then, as if finding her voice from some deep well inside, she whispered, "Dead. They are all dead." Lucas looked past her into the coach and saw 2 more bodies, passengers who had not survived the crash. His jaw tightened. This was the 3rd accident on this stretch of road in as many months. The stage company kept promising to fix the route, but promises did not bring the dead back to life. "Anyone else with you?" he asked gently, approaching her slowly as one might approach a spooked mare. "My husband," she said, her voice hollow. "He is the one outside. We were going to Tucson. He had business there. We were going to start fresh." Her words trailed off and she swayed slightly. Lucas caught her elbow, steadying her. "When did you last drink water?" She looked at him as if he had spoken a foreign language. He guided her to a patch of shade near a boulder and retrieved his canteen from his saddle. She drank deeply, some of the water spilling down her chin, and he could see her trying to gather herself, trying to make sense of a world that had just collapsed around her. "I am Lucas Foster," he said. "My ranch is about 3 miles east. I need to ride to Galesburg and get the sheriff, but I cannot leave you here alone." "Zara," she said quietly. "Zara Thompson. That was my married name anyway," she laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. "Married for 6 months. We lost everything in a fire back in Missouri. Came west to try again, and now—" She gestured helplessly at the wreckage. Lucas had known loss himself. His wife had died giving birth to a stillborn son 3 years ago, and he had buried them both on a hillside overlooking his ranch. Since then, the days had blurred together in a routine of work and silence, the house echoing with absence. He understood that hollow look in Zara's eyes, that sensation of floating untethered in a world that had suddenly become unfamiliar. "Can you ride?" he asked. At her nod, he helped her to her feet. "We will go to town together. You can ride with me." She did not protest as he helped her mount his horse, then swung up behind her. She felt small and fragile against him, trembling despite the heat. They rode in silence for the first mile, and then she spoke again. "I have nothing, not even enough money to bury him properly." Lucas kept his eyes on the road ahead. "We will figure it out, one thing at a time." Galesburg shimmered in the afternoon heat as they approached. A collection of weathered buildings clustered around a main street that ran straight as a rifle shot through the center of town. Sheriff Dawson was outside his office, and his expression shifted from curiosity to concern as Lucas explained the situation. Within the hour, a wagon had been dispatched to collect the bodies, and Zara sat in the sheriff's office, answering questions in a voice that grew steadier with each word. Lucas waited outside, leaning against the hitching post, watching the town go about its business. He knew he should get back to the ranch, that there were evening chores waiting, but something kept him there. When Zara finally emerged, The sun was lowering toward the western mountains, painting everything in shades of copper and gold. "The sheriff said I could stay at the boarding house tonight," she said. "But I do not have money for that either." I had a small purse with a few dollars, but it must have flown out during the crash. I looked but could not find it. Lucas straightened. The words came out before he had fully thought them through. "Come to the ranch. I have a spare room. You can stay there until you figure out what comes next." She looked at him with those green eyes searching his face for something. "You do not even know me." "No," he agreed. "But out here that does not matter much. You need help and I can offer it. Simple as that." Zara was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Just for a few days. Until after the funeral. Then I will find work in town, find somewhere else." They stopped at the general store where Lucas bought some basic necessities for his unexpected guest, then rode out as the shadows lengthened across the desert floor. His ranch sat in a valley between two ranges of hills, a modest spread with good water and decent grazing. The house was simple, built from adobe and timber, with a wide porch that caught the evening breeze. He had built it himself during those first hopeful years of marriage, dreaming of filling it with children and laughter. Now it held only memories and silence. Zara dismounted stiffly, looking around at the corrals, the barn, the chicken coop. "You run this place alone." "Have a ranch hand who comes in 3 times a week," Lucas said. "But mostly, yes. It is not a large operation. About 200 head of cattle, some horses, chickens for eggs." He carried the supplies inside and showed her to the spare room. It was small but clean, with a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out toward the eastern hills. "I know it is not much," he began, but she cut him off. "It is perfect. Thank you, Mr. Foster." "Lucas," he corrected. "No need for formality when you are staying under my roof." That first evening was awkward, both of them dancing around the strangeness of the situation. Lucas made a simple dinner of beans and cornbread, and they ate mostly in silence. Afterward, Zara insisted on washing the dishes despite her obvious exhaustion. He did not argue, sensing she needed something to do with her hands, some small way to feel useful. When she finally retreated to her room, Lucas sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, listening to the night sounds of the desert. Coyotes called in the distance, and somewhere an owl hooted. He wondered what he had gotten himself into, inviting a stranger into his home. But when he thought of leaving her alone in that boarding house, surrounded by curious townspeople and their questions, it had seemed wrong somehow. The funeral was held 2 days later in the small cemetery on the edge of Galesburg. Besides Lucas and Zara, only the sheriff and the undertaker attended. The preacher said words over the 3 graves, and Zara stood dry-eyed through it all, her face a mask of control. Lucas had paid for a simple headstone for her husband, Robert Thompson, despite her protests. She had promised to repay him, though they both knew she had no means to do so. After the service, they returned to the ranch. Zara changed out of her borrowed black dress and into the simple work dress Lucas had bought her at the store. She found him in the barn, mending tack, and stood in the doorway. "I should go to town tomorrow," she said. "Look for work. The boarding house needs a cook, I heard. Or maybe the saloon needs help." Lucas looked up from the bridle he was repairing. "Not the saloon. I cannot be picky about where I work. The owner has a bad reputation, treats his girls poorly." He set down the leather and stood. "Look, I know you want to be independent, I understand that. But there is plenty of work here if you want it. I could use help with the house, the chickens, the garden. I can pay you a fair wage, room and board plus $30 a month." Zara crossed her arms. "That sounds like charity." "It is not charity, it is a business arrangement. This place has been falling apart since my wife died. I focus on the ranch work and let everything else slide. The house needs a woman's touch, and I need someone who can cook something besides beans. You need work and a safe place to stay. It makes sense." She studied him for a long moment. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Lucas thought about how to answer that. Maybe because I know what it feels like to lose everything. Maybe because out here we help each other or we do not survive. Does the reason matter? I suppose not, she said finally. All right. I will stay and work for you. But this is business, like you said. I earn my keep. Deal. They shook hands on it, and something shifted between them, and understanding reached. Over the following weeks, Zara threw herself into transforming the ranch house. She scrubbed and cleaned, mended curtains that had gathered dust, planted herbs in the kitchen garden. She proved to be an excellent cook, and meals became events Lucas looked forward to rather than mere fuel for the day. They fell into a routine. Lucas would rise before dawn and head out to work the ranch, checking on cattle, riding fence line, handling the dozens of tasks that kept the place running. Zara would manage the house, tend the garden, collect eggs, and have hot meals waiting when he returned. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams that had died, their fears about the future. Lucas learned that Zara had grown up in St. Louis, the daughter of a shopkeeper. She had married Robert when she was 22, drawn to his confidence and ambition. They had opened a dry goods store together, building it slowly until fire had swept through their neighborhood one dry autumn, taking everything they owned. Robert had heard about opportunities in Arizona territory and convinced her to start over. Now, at 24, she was starting over again, alone. She learned that Lucas had come from Texas, following his older brother who had dreams of ranching. His brother had died of fever during their first year, leaving Lucas to build the ranch alone. He had met his wife Emma at a church social in Galesburg, a quiet girl with a sweet smile. Their marriage had been happy but brief, ended by the complications of childbirth that the doctor could not prevent. He was 31 now and had not looked at another woman since Emma's death, had not even considered it until Zara arrived. He did not realize he was falling in love with her until about 6 weeks into her stay. It was a small moment, nothing dramatic. He came in for lunch and found her at the stove, humming a tune he did not recognize, sunlight streaming through the window and catching in her dark hair. She turned and smiled at him, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, and his heart stumbled in his chest. The realization shook him. He had no right to feel this way, he told himself. She had just lost her husband, was still grieving, still finding her feet. And yet, the feeling grew stronger with each passing day, rooting itself deep in his chest until he could barely look at her without wanting to tell her how she had brought light back into his dark world. Zara felt it too, though she fought against it harder. Some mornings she would wake and forget, for just a moment, where she was and how she had gotten there. Then memory would crash back, and with it came guilt, sharp and familiar. She had loved Robert, or thought she had. And here she was barely 2 months after his death, finding herself drawn to the quiet rancher who had given her sanctuary. She caught herself watching Lucas when he worked, admiring the strength in his arms as he repaired a fence post, the gentleness in his hands when he handled a skittish horse. He was unfailingly kind to her, never pushing, never demanding more than she was ready to give. And slowly, without meaning to, she began to imagine a life here, a real life, not just a temporary arrangement until something better came along. The realization frightened her. One evening in late October, they sat on the porch as usual, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The air had finally cooled from the brutal summer heat, carrying the first hints of autumn. Lucas had been quieter than usual all day, and Zara could sense something weighing on his mind. "What is wrong?" she asked finally. "You have barely said 2 words since supper." He was silent for a long moment, then let out a long breath. "I have been thinking maybe I should hire another hand, someone full-time. Business is getting better and there is more work than I can handle alone." "That sounds like a good idea," Zara said carefully, sensing there was more. "Thing is, if I do that, I will need the spare room for the hand to stay in." He was not looking at her, staring instead at the horizon. "I have been thinking maybe I should build on an addition to the house. Add another room or 2. Zara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Are you asking me to leave?" "No," Lucas said quickly, finally turning to face her. "That is not what I meant at all, I just—" He stopped, frustrated. "I am making a mess of this." "Of what?" He stood up, pacing to the edge of the porch and back. "Zara, these past couple months having you here, it has been good. Better than good. I know this started as a business arrangement, and I know you are still grieving Robert, and I have no right to feel the way I do, but how do you feel?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Lucas stopped pacing and looked at her, really looked at her. "Like I am waking up after sleeping for 3 years. Like this house is finally a home again instead of just a place where I exist. Like maybe I could have a future again instead of just endless days of work and silence." Zara stood slowly, her heart pounding. "Lucas, you do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I know it is too soon. I know you might not ever feel the same way, but I cannot keep pretending I just see you as my housekeeper. I look at you and I see someone I could spend the rest of my life with, someone I want to spend the rest of my life with." He ran a hand through his hair. "I had this whole speech planned and it is coming out all wrong." "It is coming out just fine," Zara said softly. She took a step toward him. "I have been fighting how I feel because I thought it made me a terrible person. Robert has been dead less than 3 months. What kind of woman starts to care for another man so quickly?" "A woman who nearly died herself," Lucas said. "A woman who deserves to live, not just survive." "I do care for you," she admitted. "More than I should, more than I expected. When I am with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. And yes, I feel guilty about that, but I cannot seem to stop it." Lucas closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "Then do not stop it. Take whatever time you need, but do not push this away just because you think you should. Robert is gone, and I am truly sorry for that. But Zara, you are still here, still alive, and maybe we both deserve a second chance at happiness." She looked up at him, tears shining in her eyes. "I am scared." "So am I," he admitted. "Terrified, actually, but I think it might be worth it anyway." She laughed shakily. "You are probably right. Does that mean you will stay, not as my housekeeper, but as—" He hesitated, searching for the right words, "as someone who is seeing where this might go." "Yes," she said simply. "I will stay." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face, and pulled her gently into his arms. She rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart, and felt something tight inside her begin to loosen. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other under the emerging stars, and Zara let herself believe, for the first time since the crash, that maybe her life was not over after all. Maybe it was just beginning. The next few weeks unfolded with a tentative sweetness. They were still careful with each other, testing boundaries, learning what this new relationship meant. Lucas would reach for her hand while they sat on the porch, and she would lace her fingers through his. She would touch his shoulder as she poured his coffee in the morning, small gestures of affection that grew more natural with each passing day. The town of Galesburg noticed, of course. In a community of barely 300 people, little remained secret for long. When Lucas and Zara drove in together for supplies one Saturday in early November, they were met with knowing looks and whispered conversations. Mrs. Henley, who ran the boarding house, stopped them on the street. "Miss Thompson," she said, her tone making the title a question. "We have not seen you in town much lately." "I have been working at Mr. Foster's ranch," Zara said evenly, "keeping house for him." "I am sure you have," Mrs. Henley said with a thin smile. "Though I wonder if that is proper. A young widow living alone with a man, even one as respectable as Mr. Foster." Lucas felt his jaw tighten, but Zara spoke before he could. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Henley, but my living arrangements are my own business. Mr. Foster has been nothing but a gentleman, and I have a room of my own. There is nothing improper about our arrangement." "Of course," Mrs. Henley said, though her expression said she did not believe it for a moment. "I am only thinking of your reputation, dear." As they walked away, Lucas said quietly, "People are going to talk." "Let them talk," Zara said with more confidence than she felt. "I know the truth and so do you. That is all that matters." But the encounter had shaken her, and that night as they sat on the porch she brought it up again. "Maybe Mrs. Henley has a point. Maybe I should move into town just to keep things proper." "Is that what you want?" Lucas asked. "No," she admitted, "but I do not want to damage your reputation either." He turned to face her. "Zara, I am a 31-year-old widower who lives on a remote ranch. My reputation consists of being a hard worker who keeps to himself. If people want to gossip, that is their choice. But I will not let fear of gossip dictate how we live our lives." He paused. "Unless you are worried about your own reputation." "I have no reputation to protect," she said. "I am just the widow from the stagecoach crash, remember, the woman who lost everything." She said it lightly, but he heard the pain underneath. "You are more than that," he said firmly. "You are the woman who survived, the woman who picked herself up and kept going. The woman who turned my house into a home again." He took her hand. "You are Zara and you are extraordinary, and I do not give a damn what Mrs. Henley thinks." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "How did you get so wise? Losing everything teaches you what matters," he said simply. They sat in comfortable silence until Zara spoke again. "Lucas, where do you see this going? Us, I mean." He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I see waking up every morning knowing you are here. I see growing the ranch together, building something that belongs to both of us. I see growing old on this porch watching sunsets just like this one." He hesitated. "Eventually, if you are willing, I see making it official, marriage, a real partnership." Her breath caught. "You want to marry me? Someday, yes. Not now if you are not ready. I know it has only been a few months since Robert died, and I do not want to rush you. But yes, Zara, I want you to be my wife. I want to build a life with you." She was quiet for so long that Lucas began to worry he had pushed too far, too fast. Then she said, "I think I would like that too. Not yet, but someday. I need more time to sort through my feelings to be sure I am choosing this for the right reasons. But Lucas, when I think about my future now, you are in it. That has to mean something." "It means everything," he said and kissed her forehead gently. Winter came to the Arizona desert, bringing cold nights and occasionally a dusting of snow in the higher elevations. The ranch work continued, harder now with the weather, but Lucas found he did not mind. Coming home to Zara made everything worthwhile. They had fallen into an easy domesticity, comfortable with each other in a way that felt both new and ancient, as if they had always been meant to find each other. In early December, Lucas taught Zara to ride properly. She had been on horses before, but never with real skill. They started with his gentlest mare, and he was patient as she learned to sit the trot, to move with the horse rather than against it. When she finally managed to canter without clutching the saddle horn in terror, she laughed with such pure joy that it made his heart ache. They began riding together in the evenings when the work was done, exploring the boundaries of the ranch and beyond. Lucas showed her the spring where his cattle watered, hidden in a box canyon with walls that glowed red in the sunset. He showed her the ridge where he had buried Emma and their son, and was surprised when Zara asked to see the graves. They stood together in the wind, looking at the simple wooden crosses. "Do you still love her?" Zara asked quietly. "Part of me always will," Lucas said honestly. "She was my wife, and she gave her life trying to bring our child into the world. That is not something I can just forget." He looked at Zara. "But what I feel for you is different, not less, just different. Emma was my past. You are my future." "I think about Robert sometimes," Zara confessed. "Wonder what he would think of all this. We were not passionately in love, I realize that now. We were partners, friends, trying to build something together, what I feel for you." She struggled for words. "It is stronger, deeper. It scares me sometimes." "Love should scare you a little," Lucas said. "It means it matters." They rode back in the gathering darkness, and when they dismounted at the barn, Zara turned to him. "I am ready." "Ready for what?" "For this." She kissed him, not the gentle brushes they had shared before, but a real kiss, full of promise and possibility. Lucas pulled her closer, and for a long moment, nothing else existed except the two of them, the cold wind and the stars beginning to emerge overhead. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "You are sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything," she said. Christmas came, their first together. They drove into Galesburg for the church service, and afterward several families invited them to dinner, but they declined, wanting to spend the day alone. Back at the ranch, they exchanged simple gifts. Lucas gave Zara a beautiful saddle he had commissioned from the leatherworker in town, with her initials tooled into the skirt. She gave him a new shirt she had sewn herself, the stitching perfect and even. But the real gift was unspoken, the knowledge that they had found each other, that they had created something worth celebrating. On Christmas night, after dinner, Lucas poured them each a small glass of whiskey and raised his glass. "To second chances." "To new beginnings," Zara added, and they drank. Later, as they prepared for bed, Lucas caught her hand. "Zara, I know we said we would wait, but I have to ask, will you marry me? Not in some distant future, but soon. This spring, maybe. I do not want to wait any more to make you my wife." She looked at him, her green eyes shining. "Robert has been gone 7 months now. Is that long enough? Will people think it is disrespectful? I do not care what people think. I only care what you think, what you feel." She took a deep breath. "Then yes. Yes, I will marry you. This spring, like you said. I do not want to wait either." They were married in April, on a warm day when wildflowers carpeted the desert in impossible colors. The ceremony was held at the small church in Galesburg, with most of the town in attendance. Some came out of genuine happiness for the couple, others out of curiosity, but Lucas and Zara did not care. They stood before the preacher and made their vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. Zara wore a simple dress of cream-colored cotton that she had made herself, with lace at the collar that Lucas had insisted on buying for her. She carried wildflowers she had picked that morning. Lucas wore his best suit, the one he had not touched since Emma's funeral, and stood tall and proud as he slipped a gold band onto Zara's finger. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas kissed her with such tenderness that several of the women in attendance dabbed at their eyes. At the reception, held in the town hall, they danced together while a fiddle player provided music, and for those few hours, they were not Lucas Foster, the lonely rancher, and Zara Thompson, the widow from the stagecoach crash. They were simply two people in love, beginning their life together. They spent their wedding night at the ranch, in the bedroom they would now share, and if Zara had any lingering doubts or guilt, they disappeared in Lucas's arms. He was gentle and patient, And when they finally lay together in the darkness, skin to skin, heart to heart, Zara understood that this was what love was supposed to feel like. Not the comfortable partnership she had shared with Robert, but this consuming certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The years that followed were the happiest of Lucas's life. With Zara's help, the ranch prospered. She proved to have a head for business, managing the books and finding ways to cut costs and increase profits. They hired 2 full-time ranch hands, built an addition onto the house, and expanded the herd. Within 3 years, they were one of the most successful small ranchers in the region. But more than the financial success, it was the small daily joys that mattered most. Morning coffee shared on the porch, watching the sun rise over the hills. Working side by side in the garden, Zara's laughter floating across the yard when Lucas made a joke. Long rides across their property, checking on cattle and simply being together. Evenings spent reading or talking or sitting in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when 2 people know each other completely. In their 2nd year of marriage, Zara became pregnant. Lucas was terrified, unable to forget what had happened with Emma, but Zara remained calm and confident. She was young and healthy, she reminded him, and had a good doctor who had recently moved to Galesburg. When her labor began on a cold November morning, Lucas paced the house like a caged animal while the doctor and a midwife attended her. When he finally heard the cry of a baby, Lucas burst into the room, not caring about propriety. Zara lay exhausted but smiling, and in her arms was a red-faced, squalling infant. "We have a son," she said softly. "A healthy baby boy." Lucas sat beside her on the bed, looking down at the tiny person they had created, and felt tears streak down his face. "He is perfect." "What should we name him?" Zara asked. Lucas thought of his own father, dead now for many years, and his brother who had brought him to Arizona. "I was thinking maybe James after my brother, but only if you like it." "James Foster," Zara said, testing the name. "I love it." They adapted to parenthood with the same partnership that marked everything else in their marriage. Lucas proved to be a devoted father, getting up with the baby at night without complaint, walking the floor with James when he fussed, changing diapers and giving baths. Zara watched him with their son and fell even more deeply in love, if that was possible. When James was 6 months old, they took him to Galesburg for the first time. Mrs. Henley stopped them on the street, the same woman who had questioned Zara's propriety all those years ago. But her expression had softened, and she cooed over the baby with genuine warmth. "He is beautiful," she said. "Looks just like his father. You 2 have done well for yourselves." After she walked away, Zara and Lucas exchanged amused glances. "I suppose we have finally earned the town's approval," Zara said dryly. "Only took 4 years," Lucas replied, and they both laughed. Their 2nd child, a daughter they named Claire, arrived 2 years after James. This birth was even easier than the first, and Lucas was not quite as terrified, though he still did not breathe properly until he heard her first cry. Claire had Zara's green eyes and dark hair, and from the moment she could toddle around, she followed her father everywhere, determined to help with every ranch task no matter how inappropriate for a toddler. Life settled into a rhythm of seasons and years. The children grew, the ranch prospered, and Lucas and Zara's love deepened into something strong and unshakable. They had arguments, of course, disagreements about money or how to discipline the children or whether to expand the ranch further. But they had learned how to fight fair, how to listen to each other, how to compromise and forgive. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas surprised Zara with a trip to Tucson, their first time away from the ranch and children overnight. They stayed in a real hotel with a proper restaurant, and for 2 days, They were just a man and woman, not parents or ranchers or responsible adults. They walked through the streets, looked in shop windows, and acted like young people courting instead of a married couple approaching middle age. On their last night, as they prepared for bed, Zara caught sight of herself in the mirror. She was 35 now, with fine lines around her eyes and a few gray hairs starting to show. Her body had changed with childbirth, softer and rounder than it had been. But when she looked at Lucas, she saw only love in his eyes, the same look he had given her on their wedding day. "You ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Taking in that broken woman from the stagecoach crash. Your life could have been simpler if you had just left me in town that day." Lucas came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I regret nothing. That broken woman became my wife, the mother of my children, my partner in everything. You made my life worth living again, Zara. How could I possibly regret that?" She turned in his arms and kissed him. "I love you. I know I say it all the time, but I need you to understand how much. You saved my life that day, not just from being stranded, but from giving up entirely. I had nothing, and you said I could start again. With you, those words changed everything." "We saved each other," he said simply. "That is what love does." They returned to the ranch refreshed, falling back into their routines with renewed energy. James, now 9, was old enough to help with real ranch work, and Lucas spent hours teaching him to rope, to ride, to understand cattle and land and weather. Claire, at 7, was still more interested in following her father around than learning domestic skills from her mother, but Zara did not mind. Let her daughter grow up knowing she could do anything, be anything. One evening, when the children were finally asleep and Lucas and Zara sat on the porch as they had countless times before, Zara said, "I was thinking today about that first night I stayed here. Do you remember? Everything was so awkward. I barely knew you. I felt lost and broken, and I had no idea what I was going to do with my life." "I remember," Lucas said. "I felt the same way, honestly. I had been alone so long I had forgotten how to be around people, but something about you felt right even then." "When did you know?" Zara asked. "When did you know you were falling in love with me?" Lucas thought back to that moment in the kitchen, sunlight in her hair, that simple smile. "About 6 weeks after you arrived. You were cooking lunch, humming some song, and you turned and smiled at me, and it hit me like a lightning bolt. I was terrified." Zara laughed softly. "I knew a few weeks after that. You had been out mending fence all day, came in exhausted and dirty, and you still asked about my day, still listened like it mattered. I realized I had never felt that seen, that valued, not even with Robert. And I felt so guilty about it." "You do not feel guilty anymore, do you?" "No," she said firmly. "I understand now that what Robert and I had was good, but it was not this. This is what I was supposed to find all along. I just had to lose everything first to be in the right place at the right time." Lucas pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, soap and sunshine, and something uniquely Zara. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter how many years we have, you will still sit here with me on the porch, watching the sun go down and talking about our day." "I promise," she said. "For as many years as God gives us, I will be right here beside you." The years continued to pass. James grew into a capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did, who understood instinctively what the land needed and how to care for it. At 18, he was already talking about building his own small house on the property, expanding the operation into something that could support multiple families. Lucas could not have been prouder. Claire, at 16, had finally developed an interest in traditional feminine pursuits, learning to cook and sew from her mother. But she never lost her love of horses and the outdoors. She could rope as well as her brother, shoot better than most men, and had a fierce independence that sometimes worried her parents but mostly made them proud. Lucas was 50 now, his dark hair heavily streaked with gray, his body bearing the aches and pains of decades of hard work. But when he looked at Zara, still beautiful to him at 44, he felt no regrets about the passage of time. Every gray hair, every wrinkle, every scar and ache was proof that they had lived, that they had built something meaningful together. They were sitting on the porch one evening, a common enough occurrence when James came out to join them. He had a nervous energy about him that Lucas recognized immediately. "What is it, son?" James cleared his throat. "I wanted to talk to you both about something." "There is a girl in town, Sarah Mitchell, the blacksmith's daughter. I have been courting her for a few months now, and I want to ask her to marry me. I wanted your blessing first." Lucas and Zara exchanged glances, communicating silently the way they had learned to do over years of marriage. "Sarah is a good girl," Zara said. "She has a kind heart and she is not afraid of hard work." "Do you love her?" Lucas asked directly. "Yes, sir," James said without hesitation. "I know I am young, but I know what I want. She makes me happy. She makes me want to be better." "Is that not what love is supposed to do?" Lucas smiled. "That is exactly what it is supposed to do. You have our blessing, son. When are you planning to ask her?" "Next Sunday, after church. If she says yes, I was hoping we could be married this fall. I know that is soon, but I do not want to wait." After James had gone back inside, Zara leaned against Lucas. "We are getting old. Our son is getting married." "We are not old," Lucas protested. "We are experienced," she laughed. "If you say so. But Lucas, it is happening so fast. Soon James will have his own family, and Claire will not be far behind, I am sure. In a few years, we will be grandparents." "Does that bother you?" "No," she said slowly. "It just makes me think about how far we have come. That woman from the stagecoach crash, she never could have imagined this life. Children, grandchildren someday, a ranch that prospers, a husband who still looks at her like she is the most important thing in his world." "You are the most important thing in my world," Lucas said seriously. "You and the children, this life we built together. None of it would exist if I had not found you that day, if you had not been brave enough to accept my offer to start again." "Start again here with me," Zara quoted softly. "Those were your exact words, do you remember? When I had nothing, when I was lost and broken, you offered me a home, a chance, a future. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," Lucas corrected. James and Sarah were married that October in the same church where Lucas and Zara had spoken their vows. The wedding was a joyous affair, and watching their son begin his own journey into marriage filled Lucas with a bittersweet happiness. Time moved forward, relentless and unstoppable, but that was not a bad thing. It meant they were living, really living, not just existing. True to James's plans, he built a small house on the eastern edge of the property and brought his bride home. Within a year, they announced Sarah was expecting, and when their daughter was born, making Lucas and Zara grandparents for the first time, it felt like the completion of a circle that had begun so many years ago on that dusty road where a stagecoach lay overturned. Claire married at 19, choosing a young rancher from a neighboring property. Her wedding was smaller than James's, as she had insisted on something simple and practical but no less meaningful. She and her husband settled nearby, visiting often, and soon she too was expecting a child. Lucas and Zara found themselves with a quieter house, just the two of them again as they had been in those early days. But now there were grandchildren to spoil, family dinners every Sunday, a legacy that would extend beyond their own lives. The ranch had grown to be one of the most successful in the region, and when Lucas finally decided to slow down a bit, James was more than capable of taking over most of the day-to-day operations. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Zara back to the spot where he had found her. The road had been improved over the years, the dangerous curve straightened out, but he still remembered exactly where the stagecoach had lain. They dismounted and stood looking at the empty desert. "I think about that day sometimes," Zara said. "How close I came to giving up entirely. If you had not come along when you did, I do not know what would have happened to me." "But I did come along," Lucas said. "And you did not give up. You were strong, Zara, even when you did not feel strong. You picked yourself up and built a new life from nothing." "Not from nothing," she corrected. "From you. You were the foundation I built on." "We were the foundation," he said, taking her hand. "Together. That is the key to everything. We faced it together." They stood in silence for a moment, then Lucas said, "I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a pendant in the shape of a wildflower. "Lucas, it is beautiful." "It is a desert marigold," he explained, fastening it around her neck. "They grow here in the spring, covering everything in gold. I saw this in a shop in Tucson last month and thought of you, how you took a barren desert of a life and made it bloom into something beautiful." Zara touched the pendant, tears in her eyes. "You are going to make me cry, and then I will be a mess." "Cry if you want," he said gently. "Happy tears are allowed." She did cry then, and he held her while she did, this woman who had lost everything and rebuilt herself into someone extraordinary. When she finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, she said, "I want you to know that every single day of these past 20 years has been a gift. Even the hard days, the struggles, the times when money was tight or the children were sick, or we argued about something stupid. All of it. Because I got to live it with you." "I feel the same way," Lucas said. "When Emma died, I thought my life was over. I thought I would just go through the motions until I died too. Then you came along and showed me that endings can become beginnings if you are brave enough to let them." They rode back to the ranch as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of amber and rose. The house came into view, solid and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney where Sarah was probably cooking dinner for the family gathering they had planned. Lucas could see James in the corral with one of the horses, and Claire's wagon coming up the road from the opposite direction. This was home, Lucas thought. Not just the physical place, but the people, the love, the life they had created together. It had started with a chance encounter and an offer spoken from the heart. "Start again here with me." 6 simple words that had changed everything. As they dismounted at the barn, their grandchildren came running out to greet them, shrieking with excitement. Lucas scooped up James's daughter while Zara caught Claire's son, and they walked toward the house together, surrounded by the noise and chaos of family. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet again, Lucas and Zara prepared for bed. It was a ritual they had performed thousands of times, comfortable and familiar. As Zara brushed her hair at the dressing table, Lucas came to stand behind her, just as he had done in that hotel room in Tucson years before. "What are you thinking?" she asked, catching his eye in the mirror. "That I am the luckiest man alive," he said simply. "That somehow, out of tragedy and loss, we found something most people spend their whole lives searching for and never find." "What is that?" "Each other. Home. A love that does not just survive but grows stronger with time." He rested his hands on her shoulders. "I do not know how many more years we will have together. 10, 20, 30 if we are fortunate. But however many it is, it will not be enough. I could have 1,000 years with you and it would not be enough." Zara reached up to cover his hands with hers. "Then we will just have to make the most of every single day we do have. No regrets, no wasted time. Just us, loving each other, building our life together." "Deal," Lucas said, and bent to kiss the top of her head. They climbed into bed, and Zara curled against his side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Outside, the desert night was alive with sounds, coyotes and insects and the whisper of wind through the dry grass. Inside, there was only warmth and safety and love. Lucas. Zara said sleepily, Thank you for finding me, for offering me a home, for loving me, for giving me a reason to live again." "Thank you for saying yes," he replied, "for taking a chance on a lonely rancher who had forgotten how to hope, for making this house a home, for giving me a family, a purpose, a future." He tightened his arms around her, "for starting again with me." She smiled against his chest. "I would do it all over again in a heartbeat, every single moment." They drifted off to sleep like that, tangled together. And if Zara dreamed, it was of sunlight and wildflowers and a tall rancher with kind eyes who had pulled her from the wreckage and shown her that life was still worth living. If Lucas dreamed, it was of green eyes and laughter and a woman who had brought color back to his gray world. The years continued their inexorable march forward. Lucas and Zara grew old together, their bodies slowing but their love never diminishing. They watched their grandchildren grow, helped James expand the ranch even further, danced at Claire's children's weddings. They became pillars of the community, respected and loved, known for their generosity and kindness. When Lucas was 65, he fell from his horse while checking fence line and broke his hip. It was the beginning of the end of his active ranching days, though he fought against it with typical stubbornness. Zara nursed him through the recovery, patient and firm, insisting he follow the doctor's orders even when he grumbled and complained. "You are not a young man anymore," she told him one afternoon when he insisted he was well enough to help with the spring branding. "Let James and his boys handle it. You have earned the right to take it easy." "I do not want to take it easy," Lucas said stubbornly. "The day I cannot work is the day I might as well be dead." "Do not talk like that," Zara said sharply. "You are not dead, you are healing. There is a difference. And Lucas, you have spent 40 years building this ranch. It is time to let the next generation take over the hard physical labor. That does not mean you are useless. It means you are smart enough to know your limitations." He sighed, knowing she was right even if he did not want to admit it. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," she said, kissing his forehead. Lucas did recover, though he walked with a slight limp afterward and had to use a cane on cold mornings when his hip ached. But he adapted, finding new ways to be useful, managing the business side of the ranch, advising James on decisions, spending time with his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, teaching them the history of the land and the family. Zara, too, had her health troubles. At 62, she developed a cough that would not go away, and the doctor diagnosed her with a lung condition that would only worsen with time. She faced it with the same practical courage she had brought to everything else in her life, adjusting her activities, taking the medicines the doctor prescribed, refusing to let it define her. They grew old, but they grew old together, and that made all the difference. On a warm spring evening when Lucas was 70 and Zara was 64, they sat on the porch as they had done for nearly 40 years of marriage. The sun was setting in a blaze of glory, the desert blooming with wildflowers after an unusually wet winter. Lucas reached over and took Zara's hand, lacing their fingers together. "You remember that first night?" he asked. "When you stayed here and everything was so awkward and uncertain?" "I remember," Zara said. "I remember thinking you must be either crazy or a saint to take in a complete stranger. I remember feeling so lost, so sure that my life was over at 24. And now," she looked at him, this man who had been her husband, her partner, her best friend for 4 decades. His hair was white now, his face lined and weathered, but his eyes were the same, still looking at her with love and tenderness. Now I know that my life did not end that day. It began. Everything before was just preparation for finding you, for building this life, for becoming the person I was meant to be. I feel the same, Lucas said. Emma's death nearly destroyed me. I was just going through the motions, waiting to die. Then you came along and reminded me what it meant to be alive, to hope, to love. You gave me a reason to keep going. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Zara said, "Lucas, I want you to promise me something. Anything. When I am gone, and I will go before you, I think with this cough getting worse, I need you to promise me you will not give up. You will not go back to that empty shell of a man you were before. You will live, really live, for whatever time you have left. For me. For our children and grandchildren. For yourself." Lucas felt his throat tighten. He had been trying not to think about the fact that Zara's health was declining, that the doctor had quietly told him she probably had only a few years left. "Zara, do not talk like that." "We have to talk like that," she said gently. "We are old, Lucas. We have had a wonderful life, better than most people ever get, but it is not going to last forever. And when my time comes, I need to know that you will be all right, that you will not waste whatever time you have left grieving." "How can I not grieve?" he asked roughly. "You are my whole world." "No," she said firmly. "I am a large part of your world, but not all of it. You have our children, our grandchildren, the ranch, your life. You have to promise me you will embrace whatever time remains. Promise me, Lucas." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "I promise. I will not just exist, I will live. But Zara, you have to know that nothing will ever be the same without you." "I know," she said softly. "And that is how it should be, but you will go on because that is what we do. We survive. We adapt. We find reasons to keep going." Lucas pulled her close, and they sat together as the stars emerged overhead, holding each other as they had done countless times before, neither wanting to acknowledge that they were running out of time. Zara held on for 3 more years, determined to see Claire's youngest daughter married, to hold another great-grandchild. She fought her failing lungs with everything she had, but finally, on a quiet morning in late autumn, with Lucas holding her hand and their children gathered around, she slipped away peacefully. Lucas felt something fundamental break inside him when she took her last breath. For several minutes he could not move, could not speak, just sat holding her hand still warm, unable to accept that she was gone. Then James gently touched his shoulder and the spell broke. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead one last time. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything. For choosing me, for loving me, for making my life worth living. I will miss you every single day, but I promise I will keep going. For you." The funeral was held on the hillside where Emma and the baby were buried, where Lucas had always known he would eventually lay Zara to rest. It seemed right somehow, all of them together overlooking the ranch they had built. The entire town turned out, testimony to how many lives Zara had touched over the years. As they lowered her coffin into the ground, Lucas stood supported by James on one side and Claire on the other, and thought about how strange it was that life continued. The sun still rose and set. The cattle still needed tending. The world kept turning even though his had just stopped. In the weeks that followed, Lucas struggled. The house felt empty and silent without Zara's presence. He found himself cooking for 2 out of habit, setting out 2 cups for coffee in the morning. At night, he would reach for her in the darkness and find only empty space. The grief was physical, a weight on his chest that made it hard to breathe. But he had made a promise, and Lucas Foster kept his promises. Slowly, painfully, he built a new routine. He spent more time with his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, teaching them the things Zara would have wanted them to know. He helped James with the ranch when his hip allowed it. He sat on the porch every evening, talking to Zara as if she could hear him, telling her about his day, about the children, about the ranch. One evening, about 6 months after Zara's death, James came to sit with him. They sat in silence for a while, then James said, "How do you do it? How do you keep going?" Lucas thought about the question. "I remember what your mother said to me before she died, that I had to keep living, really living, not just existing. Some days are harder than others, but I made her a promise. And besides, I look around and I see everything we built together. The ranch, our family, all the lives we touched. Zara is not really gone, you know. She is in all of this, in you and Claire, in your children, in every fence post and corral on this land. How can I give up when she is still all around me?" James nodded slowly. "She was an amazing woman." "Yes, she was," Lucas agreed. "I was lucky to have her for as long as I did. 44 years of marriage, 50 years since the day I found her by that overturned stagecoach. That is more than most people get. I have to be grateful for what we had, not just sad about what I have lost." "Do you believe you will see her again, in heaven or wherever?" Lucas looked up at the stars, the same stars he and Zara had watched together for decades. "I do not know. I hope so. But even if I do not, I know I made her happy. I know we had a good life together. I know I loved her with everything I had and she loved me the same way. That has to be enough." Lucas lived for 5 more years after Zara's death. They were quiet years, spent mostly at the ranch, surrounded by family. He grew thinner and more frail, his body slowly wearing out, but his mind remained sharp until the end. He told stories about Zara to anyone who would listen, keeping her memory alive, making sure the younger generations understood what an extraordinary woman she had been. On a spring morning when the desert was covered in wildflowers, the same kind of morning when he and Zara had been married so many years ago, Lucas died peacefully in his sleep. He was 75 years old. When James came to check on him and found him gone, there was a small smile on his face, as if he had seen something wonderful just before the end. They buried him next to Zara on the hillside, and the entire town came to say goodbye to a man who had been a fixture in their community for over 50 years. The preacher spoke about love and legacy, about a life well lived, about a man who had found his soulmate in the most unlikely circumstances and had built something beautiful with her. After the funeral, as the family gathered at the ranch house, James raised a glass. "To my parents," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "who taught us what love looks like, who showed us that even when you lose everything, you can start again if you are brave enough, who built all of this from nothing but hard work and devotion to each other." "To Lucas and Zara," the family echoed, raising their own glasses. And on the hillside, if one believed in such things, 2 spirits stood together watching the sunset, hand in hand, ready to start their next adventure together, wherever it might lead. The ranch continued to prosper under James's management, and then his sons after him. But in the family history, passed down through generations, the story that was told most often was not about cattle or land or business success. It was about a lonely rancher who had found a woman by the side of a road, a woman who had lost everything, and how he had offered her hope when she had none. How he had said those simple words that changed both their lives forever: "Start again here with me." And she had, and together they had built something that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes, a legacy of love and family and perseverance. Proof that even in the hardest times, even when everything seems lost, there is always the possibility of a new beginning if you are brave enough to reach for it. Years later, When Claire's great-granddaughter asked about the wildflower pendant that had been passed down through the generations, carefully preserved and treasured, her mother told her the story. About Lucas and Zara, about a stagecoach crash and a chance encounter, about love found in the desert, blooming like marigolds after rain. "Your great-great-great-grandmother was the strongest woman I never met," she said. "She lost her husband, her home, everything she owned, but she did not give up. She took a chance on a stranger who offered her kindness, and together they built all of this." She gestured around at the ranch, still thriving, still home to their family. Remember that story. Remember that no matter how bad things get, there is always hope. There is always the possibility of starting again. The little girl held the pendant carefully, looking at the delicate gold wildflower. "I will remember," she promised. And so the legacy continued, generation after generation. The story of Lucas and Zara becoming family legend. A reminder that love could be found in the most unexpected places, that tragedy could transform into triumph, that two broken people could come together and create something whole and beautiful. On the hillside where they rested side by side, the wildflowers bloomed every spring without fail, covering the ground in gold, a living testament to a love that had transcended death itself. Visitors to the graves would sometimes report feeling a sense of peace there, as if the love that had filled those two lives still lingered, blessing all who came near. And perhaps it did. Perhaps love like that, pure and strong and enduring, never truly dies. Perhaps it seeps into the land itself, into the stones and soil, becoming part of the very fabric of a place. Perhaps that is what legacy really means, not just the things we build or the children we raise, but the love we give and receive, the kindness we show, the second chances we offer to broken strangers by the side of the road. In the end, that was the story of Lucas Foster and Zara Thompson Foster. A story of loss and love, of second chances and new beginnings, of a lonely rancher who found his soulmate in the wreckage of a stagecoach and offered her the greatest gift anyone can give, a chance to start again, with him, together, forever.